Hi, welcome back to Analytical Media. We are a consortium of therapists, researchers, published authors, academics, peer-reviewed, by the way. Authors means other experts in the field in academia have reviewed it before it was published and accepted it or asked for changes. Today, we're going to look at a case from a long letter written to us about gang stalking. This is someone who believes they are a victim of gang stalking. They are a targeted individual. The meeting we had about this roughly 37 minutes ago, from that meeting we have a group of concerns, questions, reasons that all of us present at that meeting felt this was delusion, mental illness, not actual gang stalking. And we have to be aware of the fact that one size does not fit all. Could gang stalking be purely a delusion? Well, of course it could be. Could gang stalking be 100% real, involving people who have no mental illness of any sort? That could be true too. But they all claim to be victims of gang stalking. How do you separate them from what's real or could be real, or what is blatantly false, or where would we go with this? Well, the case study that I'm about to read you, the letter written by a TI to us, does appear to be delusional. Give you our conclusions. We are going to stop at places during the letter where pertinent and relevant and point out to you at that point what is concerning to us or indicative that this is delusional and not reality-based. I will now begin to read you the letter. Hello, my name is blank. I have known there would be a terrorist attack in Boston years prior to the attack, and the police have claimed they've misinterpreted nearly every threat I've encountered. Outside of NTSB, related to the GOP, and yet didn't quite grasp why, if that was the subject, they're interested in taking me to a mental hospital with schizoaffective disorder as the diagnosis, when I had asked if my parents were mafia members whom were inside of the house. I had provided many classified details in and not to them, and one parent, a abusive father, also been available or in the presence of a man, my uncle, whom has a daughter who works in Boston and owns a microchip corporation with her husband. She gives the name of her husband and her cousin, that threatened to torture me, stating in front of his own daughter, Julia, and my father, I'm going to torture you, period. Now, first of all, at a mental hospital, she was diagnosed as having schizoaffective disorder. However, she misspells schizoaffective. She spells it with an E, and it should be spelled with an A. The schizoaffective with a, she spells it with an E. The E in affective, she does not spell it with an A to start the word affective. And you would think if you were hospitalized with this disorder, you would know how to spell it. Most people would. They would have looked it up many times. Also, we see loosening of association, which is typical of a schizophrenic. You can see she starts with, I had known there would be a terrorist attack in Boston years prior to the attack, and the police had claimed they've misinterpreted nearly every threat I've encountered outside of NTSB related to the GOP, and yet didn't quite grasp why, if that was the subject, they're interested in taking me to a mental hospital with schizoaffective disorder as a diagnosis, when I had asked if my parents were mafia members who were inside of the house She consistently uses whom where she should be using who. Whom were inside of the house. I had provided many classified details in that house and not to them, and one parent, a abusive father. You can see the loosening of association. This is not moving straight ahead. This is she's getting to a point and moving to a different point. Moving. Her associations, rather than being direct, A leading to B, it's A goes to B, but B doesn't go to C. B goes to F, and F goes to H, and H goes to B. The associations are not straight. It's not A, B, C, D, E, F. It jumps around. Another point I would mention is she appears to be important, she believes in her own mind. Important enough to know that there was a terrorist attack planned in Boston years prior to the attack. And yet, her ability to think is so badly impaired, and the way she's being treated is not as if she was someone important, someone who could have information, though she assumes that she is and takes the position that she is someone with a high status or grandeur. And also, the only time she mentions the NTSB and is followed quickly in a few words by, again, GOP. Nowhere else in the document that I'm familiar with at this point in time is this the case. So I would say that NTSB led to her saying GOP. So we see, this is one sentence, what I've read to you so far. And she asked if her parents were mafia members. Right after she mentioned schizoaffective disorder as a diagnosis, she asked if her parents were mafia members. And then she adds, whom were inside of the house. It's irrelevant where they were, inside of the house or outside of the house, but it's the no direct association, this loose associations. Her parents, they lived in a house, they were inside the house then. And she said, I had provided many classified details in that house, and not to them and one parent. And then she says, a abusive father also been available or in the presence of a man, my uncle. What about her uncle? What's the association with her uncle? What's that got to do with the abuse? Well, my uncle, whom has a daughter who works in Boston. That's so typical. And owns a microchip corporation with her husband named such and such. And they threatened to torture her, stating in front of the other daughter, Julia, and her own father, they said, I'm going to torture you, period. This is, schizophrenia is most definitely, and I don't care what people agree with this or not, it's the most serious mental illness, and always has been. It's very, very serious, has long been associated with catatonia, the inability to move whatsoever, to go from a human being to a statue, and that could last for hours, many hours, multiple hours, where you're frozen. It's a very serious condition, schizophrenia. Not anything like an anxiety disorder or depression. This is the most serious of all delusions. And she goes on to say, I was referred to as delusional for a number of reasons prior to and after that set of events that took place, according to a police officer and my parents, though in my opinion, they are beyond delusional and corrupt. They sent a hostage negotiator to my apartment after what I realized was a microchip indicating or making me feel cuts on my skin, and revealed there would be a terrorist attack in England. And now we see the reference to being chipped, microchipped, or sometimes the references to aliens. In centuries past, the reference would have been to demons, literally demons. The incubus and the succubus were the name of the most common demons involved. And they also had claims of sexual attack associated with both the incubus and the succubus. You can look that up. So there's a grandiosity with this woman, a loosening of associations, and no direct evidence or claims she's making of having been a targeted individual or stalked. Not typically. They claim this is unusual. However, I had tried to stop multiple high-profile criminals, and I even wanted to stop Trump. Yes, that would be President Donald J. from misusing misguided information in reference to a pandemic, and what later led to a breach in reference to impeachment, period. I'd come to conclusions about there would be terrorists on planes and questioned if I, like my cousin, had caused problems with the Navy and with so many complications taking place prior. Parentheses, they held me against my will. Felt as though everyone was an enemy. At that point, I noticed delusions. These police officers and my family and the doctors, open parentheses, one whom said I wanted to have sex with you, to me, Dr. So-and-so at a mental hospital, again a sexual reference, just as the incubus and the succubus are a sexual reference when used in centuries previous to this. I have been obsessed with making it so I go through as much pain as possible, and for it to be disregarded and to assure others to disregard it as well. One police officer even told me he had kidnapped women when I was being held against my will in a housing development, and I couldn't leave. I hadn't saved money, and I hadn't had a job. It was thought out. And I couldn't leave. Subordinates were conspiring to release information to find a whistleblower, in my opinion, prior to what the president would do or after, like it was a game. I was being tortured while they did this, and when the police officer forced me back into the housing development, I was tortured while being cut with a microchip. There was nearly an exorcism. I could have died. However, they spent a good amount of money, and I ended up going to 2 different housing developments, always running, always discovering I'd been sexually assaulted, always going through what some officers imply is a lie, while others of higher power now state is true and not a hallucination, after being rescued after a gruesome attempted murder. And apparently someone blackmailed my parents or threatened them, and SSI checks handed over to my parents, nice and tidy. If this woman were really a targeted individual, she is a mentally ill targeted individual, or may I say, perhaps better stated, she shows every indication of suffering from a delusional disorder characterized by the loosening of association, perspective of grandeur. She acts as if she has inside information. She is more and more, as this letter goes on, her spelling, her punctuation becomes worse and worse. Completely characteristic of a loosening of associations, which in the beginning of word salad. You've heard of word salad, where words are put together. Like you take all the words that would be in a paragraph, say we printed them out, nice big letters, all the words, not the letters, but the lettering would be large, and They'd be different colors for the letters. And you take them all and you arrange them into coherent sentences. And then you take them all together and throw them in a bowl and toss them like you would salad. And then you pour them out and arrange them in nice, neat lines. And what do you have? You have word salad, which your ability to communicate is breaking down so much. You're losing the ability to use words. And you can see that her adjectives are inappropriate. And then when she claims she's been sexually assaulted, and she was told then by the officers that it wasn't true, then higher ranking officers, higher, more important people say, others of higher power now state it's true. This is the sexual assault and not a hallucination. And then hallucinating association after being rescued after a gruesome attempt murder, not attempted, attempt murder. And apparently someone blackmailed my parents or threatened them, and SSI checks handed over to my parents nice and tidy. So she's claiming now that her parents are going along with this or being forced to go along with it. Irregardless, they're benefiting because they're getting her SSI checks. What they expect to have revealed is the irony of the police officers or doctors' names that were threatening my life, as it was a alliteration in reference to ally countries, perhaps she meant allied, and the president or Democrats, which is what saved my life. And now she asks some questions. Now, do you think they had the ability to help me with this so-called hallucination? Are they within their legal rights to enforce threats implying I should kill myself? If as a child I knew China would release information about genes, I'd have to supply information and might have about the pandemic, yet there is the position to place me back in a mental hospital anywhere. They do not have supplements required material, and though they have asked my mother as if it's a fit, I assure you when I typed Magic Mountains words, and I quote, maybe they'll send a postcard, a couple of days before the email that was so threatening to the White House about Iraq and food, did any of these people so willingly know how humiliating and disgusting it is to cause such an injustice? Whether I have a lawyer or the right medication, or maybe stating legality points as though I'm standing trial. And then she says I live somewhere in Texas. Whether I try to provide this to the police, Hawaii will make a mistake in reference to mass weapons. I suppose I should say, hi, I'm incoherent, I'm sorry. And then she thanks us and signs her name. She says, when I typed Magic Mountains words, and I quote, maybe they'll send a postcard, end quote. Now, I know it sounds at this point like it makes no sense at all. However, even with loosening of association, these phrases, these sentences that are put together can sometimes be interpreted, and the meaning could be there. I am not familiar with Magic Mountain words. I don't know. There is a Magic Mountain. It may be from a movie. It may be a reference to something else. And she's saying specifically, maybe they'll send a postcard. Is that in anything you're familiar with? Have you seen it in a movie? Do you know what she might be making reference to? It's possible. If you do, help everyone else out with that reference. This is a letter from someone claiming to be targeted. It is our interpretation that this woman is likely delusional, and I read you all the indications that she is. Certainly no one out there listening to this would think that she is highly coherent. More than likely you'll agree with us that she is not making a lot of sense, and I've pointed out specifically what was wrong. And I could have mentioned other things that we discussed earlier. Therapists and police officers deal with targeted individuals. It would be a mistake, a terrible mistake, to assume that all targeted individuals, all TIs, all victims of gang stalking, have this woman's mental state. I can assure you, we have all personally, here at Analytical Media, we've all personally talked to gang stalking victims or persons claiming to be gang stalking victims who were perfectly coherent, very bright, spoken perfect grammar. So there must be a distinction made. This is the evidence that is brought to an individual, to a therapist or police officer. This is the evidence you're bringing to them. Your story is your evidence. It's not proof, but this is what you're claiming. And this is what you're going to be judged on. I'm sure many people out there who see this, who believe they are gang stalking victims, I'm sure they will quickly say, this woman is mentally ill. This woman is not thinking correctly. She's delusional. They make a distinction. People claiming to be TIs make a distinction between people who are real and people who are wrong. If you were a policeman or if you were a therapist, how would you react to this? What do you think? And you could be a first responder of some kind. You certainly could be a police officer, member of law enforcement, or a therapist. How would you react to this? There very well could be mentally ill people, delusional people, who believe that they are gang stalking victims. And at the same time, there could be people who really are gang stalking victims. And I compliment you if you're a viewer of this channel who believes themselves to be gang stalking victims or TIs, who see the difference. If you can say, no, there's a difference, then I think that's an important thing. It would be foolish to think that everyone who claims to be a gang stalking victim is. I think it would be foolish to believe that everyone who claims to have personally met someone from another planet did actually meet someone from another planet. And it would be wrong to say that no one who claims to be a TI is. And it would be wrong to say that no one who claims to have met an alien did. We need reality brought in here. We need evidence. We need some evidence. Something to objective, reality-based, first responder, Leo, attorneys, therapists, they all deal with on a pretty regular basis. They have a high possibility of coming into contact with someone claiming to be a TI. Here at Analytical Media, we've shared our interpretation of this letter to you and with you. You may disagree. You may have your own opinions. Let us know. Post it in comments. Send us an email. Whatever. Once again, Analytical Media has taken a deep look at this topic, which is essential to understanding it. Things aren't simple in life. And I think the older you get, the more you realize it's not simple. When you're 10, they seem simple. When you're 18, they seem very doable. But as you age, you suddenly see that it's very confusing. This is a complicated reality that we live in. Hopefully, we've helped. It's our goal at Analytical Media. And hopefully, we've accomplished that. If so, thank us. We thank you for viewing this. We feel good if we're succeeding. Recommend us, subscribe, whatever. It'll help more people. This will get posted to more people. And if you've benefited, it's up to you to share it with somebody else. Okay, we'll see you in the next video. Hopefully everything's going great for you. We'll see you then. Take care.